Well, good morning, Daryl.
Morning, Shannon. How are we doing?
Doing well. How are you?
Good. Good to be in Japan, huh?
I think the last time we were together and you were on stage was in Switzerland, which was a really, really fun, great event.
It was a long time ago.
It was a while ago.
You're making me feel old already. Don't do that again, all right?
Staying up till 2 a.m. with friends makes me feel old too here.
Yeah, those are the days.
Anybody else do that last night? No?
Why is it other people are more mature than us?
Oh, so great. So obviously, Daryl and I are here to talk about aligning business and sustainability. And as we were talking, we decided to not have any script, so we don't know exactly what we're going to say. So
be kind with me, okay?
Yeah, vice versa. But I'd like to share a little story about my moment when I remember the exact moment when I decided that ATTA needed to take a stand on sustainability, and you know, the principles were there, and I felt this way, but we were sea kayaking in Brazil after the ABETA event, which was the Association of Adventure Travel Companies there, and Gustavo Chimo, who ran the organization and appropriately now runs our sustainability efforts at ATTA, we were sea kayaking and talking about how hard it was, because I think it was 2009, so we'd gone through or sometime in 2008, so the financial crisis had happened, and Gustavo said, man, you need to take a stand. You need to be way more public. ATTA has a voice. And I remember saying, we're barely making payroll. Like we have to focus on that. And he's like, you do both, man, do both.
Yeah, totally. He's right, he's good.
And I remember thinking, being a little shocked by that, but also thinking, well, yeah, it is both, which sounds funny now in 2023, but it was a long time ago, and it was still, we were a fledgling organization, didn't have our act together on a bunch of things, and so that was kind of the beginning of my journey with ATTA and sustainability, and I'd love to have you share with the audience, what was your moment? If there was a moment.
Yeah, no, it's interesting actually. There really was. It was perhaps a bit more embarrassing than yours, I think. At Intrepid, I think we've kind of, in a way, grown up with sustainability, and so it was really a part of what we did from the very, very early days. And we got a pretty good reputation for the way we, worked with local communities and what we did in terms of what we called responsible tourism in those days. And that was fun. We won a couple of awards, and back in 2005, February 2005 it was, we just picked up this global award, and we're feeling pretty proud of ourselves. We're doing really well, And I got on a plane with the family and the kids, and we went off to Botswana to do a safari. And we was driving around one morning, and then, you stop middle of the day under a tree, read a book, and I'd picked up a copy of Tim Flannery's The Weathermakers at the airport on the way over. And I kind of thought, what is this climate change? I know a bit about it, but not much. And then as I started reading, and I was kind of getting more engaged and thinking more. And then I had this penny drop moment, and I kind of thought, hang on a sec, we're a venture travel company, we're pretty proud of what we do in sustainability. Actually, when it comes to climate change, we're environmental vandals. Because we're a real part of the problem. Because what do? We really encourage people to travel from one corner of the world to another corner of the world so they can have a good time. And in that process, there's a shit ton of carbon emissions going into the air. And it was just that kind of a moment where I just thought, oh wow, we are really a part of the problem. We're not the good guys here. And so got back, and about 9 months later, The Inconvenient Truth came out with Al Gore. And so that started more conversations, and long story short is that over the next 4 years we set out to become carbon neutral, and there's been a lot of work since then, and in fact it's kind of worse than it was then, clearly. But anyway, we can talk more about climate change if you like to, because I'd like to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I have another anecdote from one of our summits in South America, a gentleman named Rafa Gallo, who many of you knew, who passed away, sadly, not long ago. He was our MC, and he was a wild one. You never knew what Rafa was going to do or say. And he was getting ready to close the event, and he walked up on stage, and without talking to us, this is years and years ago, without telling us, he committed the ATTA's next summit to be carbon neutral
Okay.
from stage, and we got
Thank
a
you very
standing
much.
ovation. And we're all sitting on the side going, I mean, we're going there, but we probably should have talked about this first. But you
How
know,
long ago was that?
in hindsight, it kind of forced us.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to say we did. And God bless Rafa, and we'll miss him. But he made a huge impact on many people in the industry. And so sometimes it's good to get out there and just be super bold and super aggressive and push others to do, the right thing.
Yeah, look, I think that's right. I think, in the travel industry generally, there's a lot of talk about sustainability and there's a lot of lip service about it. And to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of bullshit about it. And I think really we've got to start holding each other accountable and really putting the fish on the table and saying, okay, we've got a problem with climate change. What are we going to do about it? Not just, oh, we've got to fix it, or the governments have got to fix it, or someone else has got to fix it. Actually, we do. We've got to do something, and by that, you've really got to get serious about it in terms of your methodology and how you're going to go about decarbonising your value chain.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit, because you have an eye into some other audiences and worlds that I think I certainly don't have, and many in the room probably don't have as well with WTTC. I know you have a role with WTTC and also with Travelist. Maybe talk a little bit about what you see happening with the bigger travel industry.
Yeah, sure. And so it was kind of interesting getting into those stages because they're kind of the big end of town a little bit. And I guess historically, I'm certainly not from that end of the town. But a few years ago, I was kind of thinking I've been a CEO for too long and it's time for someone else to do it. And so I think one day actually my wife said to me, yeah, okay, so you don't want to be CEO anymore. And I think she kind of thought, well, he's going to be hanging around the house a little bit more. And I don't think she liked the idea of that. So she said, you've got to get out and do some more. And so joined WTTC at that point. And so kind of, it's fair to say I had a level of frustration because there was a level of talk, but not a level of commitment and action in large companies in particular. And WTTC is 250 of the biggest companies in global tourism. So, it's all your big hoteliers, it's, airlines, it's all the cruise companies, etc. So, they're big companies with serious carbon emissions, serious sustainability issues, human rights issues, all that kind of stuff. And so it was nice to be at that table, but I had a level of frustration, and I guess being who I am, I aired that frustration. And so these days I find myself as vice chair of the bloody thing to try and really force change in sustainability. And it's good and it's bad. The good thing about it is that you are talking to amazing companies with amazing points of leverage that can really impact things. Just by the sheer scale that they work at, and when they commit to something, things happen. Because they can throw resources at it and make sure they get it right. And so that's great. And it's really, really important. Whereas the other side, though, is that steering these huge kind of ocean tankers is not easy, and trying to influence them is not easy, and the speed of which change happens is slow. And like anyone in this room, I think it's fair to say, if we make a decision, generally speaking, you can act on that decision, and you can get things happening pretty quickly. And don't lose sight of that fact. That's a real joy that you've got control of doing what you want to do. These companies, control is a different thing, and it's frustrating at times to do it. So
yeah. Sometimes it's super depressing. Well, often it's depressing to look at where things are at, especially with climate. And I think back to, I was the MC of the sustainability panel at WTTC in Mexico. I think it was in 2010, so a long time ago. So this is actually, this story ends positively. And we finished the panel. The room was almost empty because Robert Redford was before us. The room was full. Most of the people left, and this is a long time ago, and so it just wasn't that interesting. And as I came off the stage, the organizer said, well, congratulations on the least worst of the sustainability panels we've ever had. And I just walked out of the room absolutely deflated and thought,
good call.
We're doomed. We're doomed. Yeah. The positive ending to that is it feels very different today. It feels like, and I know there's greenwashing, there's a lot of BS out there, but it feels like, especially in the ecotourism and adventure travel side, that there's a real push to start doing things right. And to me, that's really encouraging, is to watch all these movements happening. But, and again, and it's, I don't want to end up on the doom and gloom side, because there's no value in that. Everybody knows now that's gonna be a part of the movement.
Look, that's true, but on the other hand, there's no value in the BS side either.
Oh, no.
And so in that sense, I think we've all got to be careful in this space, because the action is happening, whether we like it or not now. We're at a singular point of time where it's no longer just an optional, should I do the right thing or should I not? How will I do this or whatever? Those days are history, they're gone. We're at this defining moment where we have to change, because whether we like it or not, we're going to be impacted. Because if you don't change, one, you're not going to pass regulatory hurdles anymore. IFRS, the International Financial Regulatory Standards, have changed new accounting standards that are coming in now and will be absolutely a part of your audit package next year for carbon disclosures. That's new, and that's compulsory. Your friends in America under GAP is slightly different, but for the rest of the world, carbon disclosure is here and now. It's amazing, and it doesn't. That's not a material size thing. It's not just the Bookings or Expedias of the world. It's little companies too. So get ready for it.
Yeah.
Similarly, litigation is coming our way. So that could be litigation because of your carbon emissions, or it could be litigation because of your greenwashing. Another slightly embarrassing story, just 3 months ago, we were taken in front of the Advertising Standards Council in the UK. Background is we're doing a campaign in the UK, and it's about good times is the thing, and it was in the tube stations in London, on trains and stations and stuff like that. And it showed a picture of a person in Morocco Egypt having a good time. And the byline at the bottom was planet-friendly adventures since 1989. We're pretty confident in that. We've got science-based targets to reduce emissions. We're a B Corp. We've done a lot of things. We can justify ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. However, and by the way, we operate land-based adventures. We don't do airfares or anything like that. The council deemed that, in fact, we were not planet-friendly because we were advertising a trip in Egypt in London. Now, that whole of journey for a person who's reading that ad entails an airfare. So even though we're not providing that airfare, they said, you are not planet-friendly adventures. Slap, slap, slap. Now, that was embarrassing, but it just showed to us that we've got to be really clear on our marketing messages, and we thought we're okay. No, we weren't okay. And what's about the same time, legislation's gone now through Europe, which is greenwashing legislation, and it's got real teeth. That UK thing, it was a slap on the wrist, but no real teeth. But in Europe now, greenwashing has a penalty attached to it of 4% of global revenue per incident. So if you're saying something and you can't absolutely back it up by audit trail and verification, you're in deep, deep trouble. So, just be careful. And then you've got your litigators, people like, Client Earth, who now are just going after companies. They're well-funded, it's a not-for-profit, they're going after it, and whether you're making claims or not, if you're a key emitter, you're in their sights. So, it's a bit of a wake-up call at the moment. It's no longer should I do it, should I not? Yeah. We're all got to get on board. It's time.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I'm sure all you guys are the same. Climate change actually has changed. We used to talk about this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or whatever, as something in the future. 2030, 2050, things might be changing. There might be this global warming, it's all in the future. It's not in the future now. It's now. It's here. It's real. And I was in our Audit and Risk Committee meeting only 2 months ago, and the level of incidents, we review incidents that happen all around the world, and unfortunately there's incidents one kind of another almost every day. It'll be a vehicle accident or some riots or some earthquakes like the other day in Morocco, etc. And things like this around the world are happening all the day, and they're all logged, and the impacts on passengers are logged and whatnot. In August, 50% of incidents we logged were climate change related.
Wow.
So that's either fires, it's extreme heat, it's whatever. And our head of sustainability was literally going through and it's a log that everyone in the company can see. And after every one, she just put climate risk, hashtag climate risk, hashtag climate risk. You know, and you think, ooh, you know, so it's today.
It's today. I talked to one of our Southern European members who offers trips, obviously, in all around Southern Europe, and they're looking at itineraries in Norway
Yeah.
because the summer was so hot that customers couldn't cycle, couldn't go hiking, couldn't do their trips, and I think the prediction is next year's even hotter.
Yeah.
So we're in for it. And
Yeah,
we're in it
and
now.
you know, the world has been getting hotter for the last 20 years, but now it's really starting to land, so the people are noticing it.
Right.
And you know, it is just, it's not just hot, it's extreme, you know, 40 plus degree days
Yeah.
back to back, you know,
Right.
for several weeks in Spain or Greece or whatever. So no, it's grim. We've got a problem. We knew it was going to
Yeah.
happen, but it's definitely happening faster.
It's here, yeah. It's been here. Some of you have heard me talk about the magic triangle. That was the concept that was brought to us by Tim Martin, Natasha Martin's dad, who was an ambassador for the country of Canada. And he was involved in eliminating or identifying blood diamonds, conflict diamonds. And he said, you know, it became really clear to us, and we called this the magic triangle, that these really thorny problems you cannot solve if you don't have government, business, and NGOs all working together on these problems. And it struck me that for the travel industry, we have a fifth point. So it's the magic diamond. It's the traveler. We need the traveler to be educated to make decisions that are smarter on every front: conservation, climate, and that's I know you know, a big push for everyone in this audience. But it strikes me that one of the most powerful points on that diamond or triangle is political will. Political will. Alina Anab, the ambassador of Jordan to Japan, has been at this event. She spoke in the beginning. We talked about it before. Without political will to do the right thing, it is very discouraging and very hard for businesses and NGOs to do what they need to do on their, you know, for their responsibility. I'm just curious, do you have any encouraging examples of political will recently that you see that has changed the game or made a difference?
Yeah, look, I think the Europeans are changing everything when it all boils down. You know, countries like America and unfortunately my own country of Australia are laggards in this space, but the Europeans are, actually even in America's not a country as it's a whole lot of states, and you've got California, which is very definitely an exception. But the Europeans collectively are leading the way, and whether that's on vehicle transportation and regulations around, you know, ending internal combustion engines, etc., or renewable energy standards and uptake and so forth, the Europeans are just setting that tone, or indeed greenwash legislation, you know. And I think that's really positive because the European market is so big that starts to create the economic engine for changes across the board. You look at the uptake of solar energy around the world right now. It's currently the cheapest form of energy in the world. It's cheaper than coal, it's cheaper than gas, it's cheaper than everything. And so not surprisingly, it's getting rolled out everywhere at scale. That's a really good news. Why did that happen? It happened because the cost curve of solar has gone lower and lower and lower. 20 years ago, it was bloody expensive. Now it's really cheap. Why did it get so cheap? Because the Europeans really said, you know what, solar's good. We're going to subsidize solar and make sure that the production catches up. And so as soon as the production gets higher and higher, the cost per unit produced gets lower and lower, and it got lower faster than anyone was expecting. But the Europeans did that. And similarly with EVs and whatnot, the more that are produced, the cheaper they'll get. And so right now, an EV total cost of ownership probably still a little bit higher than an ICE engine, but that's falling dramatically and quickly. And next year you watch, because global battery supply now is outtaken demand, and so vehicle prices for EVs are just going to plummet next year, which is great.
So I want to ask you two opposite questions. The first one is, where do you feel the travel industry is lacking or failing in in will to do things differently? At large, understanding
Yeah, yeah.
we're not a monolith.
Look, I go back to your diamond a bit. You know, people talk about the customer, and the customer is, of course, important in this equation, and we want the customer on board, and ideally, we'd want the customer setting the tone by demanding, you know, more standards and lower carbon trips or hotel rooms or whatever it is. The reality is the customer isn't probably going to lead this revolution. You know, it's actually people like us in this room here that say, you know what, we've got to do something. I've got control of my business. We've got a point of leverage where we can exert change on our supply chain. We can talk to the customers and educate them, but ultimately we've got to take action. And the nice thing about that, and you know, this is, I'll say it with our own example at Intrepid, is that when you take a leadership position, there's a payback curve which you don't perhaps expect. I think people say, you know, like, look, in a room you might say, well, how do I decarbonise? I could, you know, do power supplies, I might get some EVs, for instance. And then the P&L factor comes into your head. You know, oh, gee, it's a bit more expensive here. You know, if I want to pay staff, we've talked a lot about climate change, but maybe it's things like a living wage for your staff. You know, it's more expensive to do that. And so people, and particularly the accountants in the room, bless them, they'll go straight to the P&L and the impacts on the balance sheet. What they're missing is that if you take a leadership position, you know, with your staff and with your customers by actually acting on things, by early adoption of EVs or renewable energy or labour standards or whatever the sustainability point is, that you can engage your broader stakeholders really well. So what starts to happen is you attract staff that otherwise you might not have attracted, and quite possibly actually at a lower salary than they were getting somewhere else. You not only attract them, but they work bloody hard and they work for you because they're on the journey with you. They believe in your values and they're on board. And they don't leave. You know, your staff, if you've got a really good sense of purpose about what you do, they're committed and they'll stay because they're sharing a journey with you to make the world better. Customers, ditto, they'll see what you're doing on the ground. You know, a lot of people still have never ridden in an EV, for instance. You know, and we're now doing EV transfers in quite a lot of cities around the world, and people are getting out of the airport and they're hopping in an EV and they go, "Ooh, wow, isn't this amazing?" You know, blah, blah, blah. And so you're giving them a bit of joy. It's not just a P&L line, it's actually an experiential line. That benefit on that is that people are just, your NPS goes up a little bit, they come back to you sooner or again, and so there's a real profit return on that. And ditto with supply chains. Your supply chains with your hotels and transport companies, you talk to them about what you want to do, why you want to do it, what you're, you know, kind of going to do financially, and they start to understand, they start to get it. They recognise also that we'll be a more loyal customer if they get on board on these issues. And so, again, there's just this cycle. So the accountants might like to say, oh, you know, there's financial results and there's your purpose results, you know, in terms of however you measure purpose. But actually, there's this beautiful symbiotic curve between the two. So the more you invest financially in your purpose activities, the more they bring benefits to your broader stakeholder groups, your staff, your customers, your shareholders and whatnot, and that drives financial performance. And that's just a really nice flywheel to get going. And so don't look at these things as kind of one or the other. They're not. You can do it all. and it's really good. And like this year, we'll grow. This year, our sales will be coming at 27% north of 2019, which was our biggest year. And our profit figure actually will be higher than that. This is in a year where we've never invested more in decarbonisation, in human rights issues, in philanthropy, which is something we haven't touched on. And, you know, stakeholders are seeing this and, you know, we're growing. We're not clever people, but we just kind of get that underlying structure right.
I talked to, on our PSA, I talked to a big Dutch outbound adventure travel company who I think by next year, or perhaps the year after, will require their entire supply chain to be certified for sustainability. And he said, we're going to tell people, if you don't do it, we're going to go looking for somebody else. And so there's that will again. And then the other, I want to touch on philanthropy briefly. That reminds me. So one of the commitments ATTA made this year, because we had a couple of people tapping on my shoulder saying, you need to be 1% for the planet. And we looked into it, and we're 1% for the planet members now. But when we looked into it, and I'm going to throw this out to everyone in the room, we were so close already from what we do. And I know the people in this audience are very, very similar in their philanthropy and their conservation efforts. I would encourage you to look into this, look into 1% for the planet. You may already be there. You just don't have the badge. You may be this close. We were very close, and so for us, we support even more the Adventure Travel Conservation Fund financially, and that put us over the line into 1% for the planet. And the revelation for me was, I bet a significant percentage of our audience is already there, and they just don't know it.
There's a good chance. And you know, things like 1% for the planet and B Corp is the other one, which is just a stunning organization, and I personally think every member should be a B Corp. The great thing about it is that it gives you a framework for action, you know, and so all of a sudden you understand, you know, as business people, we generally like to measure things, don't we? And so 1% for the planet, B Corp, it provides you a measurement framework so you know what to do. You're not flailing around in the dark. You know,
I think we're there.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. You know, we're pretty good, aren't we? But it actually gives you a structured approach. And of course, with B Corp, there's a whole community there. So if you don't actually know much about, I don't know, decarbonisation, there's a working group on decarbonisation, and there's people like Intrepid there, and we'll say, hey, we've done this before, we've done it for 20 years, here's our blueprint, it's all open source, you go for it, and you take learnings from other companies, because ultimately, we're all just trying to be better. You know, and it's not a competitive advantage or anything like that. It's just, hey, let's get better. Let's ensure that we've actually got a future for ourselves, and bake it in hard. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. You probably don't know this, but our keynote speaker at the end of last year, Jean-Claude Rosel, who's a French Brazilian, owns a rafting company there. It was the highest rated speaker we've ever had in 20 years. He just killed it, and his core message was, stop building for what the traveler's asking. So this is harking back to what you said. Stop building for what the traveler is asking and start building what your destination needs. And I love that. It's flipping the script of the customer is always right. The customer is often wrong or uninformed or doesn't know or
And you know, even from a self-serving, self-interest perspective, doesn't that make sense? You know, we're all got businesses, and you know, we want those businesses to be worth more in the future. So if they're going to be worth more in the future, how do we ensure that we've got something to sell in the future? You know, how can, you know, want to have destinations and products that we can take people to that they're getting more joy out of in the future than they're getting now. Now, tourism's bad at this. In reality, you know, there's a lot of, you know, the word over-tourism. It's true, it's real. You go to certain places and you just think, Jesus, that's not nice. And it kind of, it kills the golden egg, you know. And so we've actually got to invest into our destinations so that those destinations are better than they are now, and people are getting more joy out of traveling in the future, and that keeps our industry going at a collective, but it certainly keeps our business going. You know, the better we can make things, the more future we've got. So we've got a financial self-interest in doing this. It's not altruistic, it's self-interest, you know?
Right. And I think that sometimes it's tempting to think that a lot of us, because a lot of us are small businesses in the adventure travel world, and what sort of difference can we make? And I think it's pretty apparent now we need everybody to do something. We need the big, we need the small, everybody to do something. I want to tell a quick anecdote, and maybe some of you in the room already know about this, but have you heard of Enduring Earth?
Don't think so.
Yeah, I hadn't either until 2 weeks ago, and it's an incredible initiative, and there's people here from Enduring Earth, and with a delegation from Mongolia that is diving into this. It's WWF and the Nature Conservancy working together with a Walmart Foundation and Pew.
Ooh,
this
is getting serious.
big money, big conservation, and they're coming together with projects that will do significant conservation projects around the world. And they're looking at how does adventure travel fit into this? Because you've got preserved lands now, you have people on the ground, how are they going to make a living? People have to put food on the table. At our ATCF breakfast yesterday, Dr. Gladys was telling incredible stories about the gorilla preservation, and a sad story about how a local speared a gorilla recently. And ultimately, it was about a self-preservation. It was about putting food on the table, and an incident occurred that ended in the death of the gorilla. And this gentleman is now in jail for 11 years. But her point was really clear. If we don't give people options, they have to do whatever they do.
Yeah.
And I think everybody in the room probably sees that in your destination. You've seen a situation where you're like, I don't like that, I don't agree with it, it's terrible. But what else is that person going to do?
Yeah,
I think that's how we can bring solutions.
There's great solutions there provided by us in this room, isn't there? You know, tourism is such a great transfer of wealth from affluent countries to developing countries. And in that transfer of wealth, you get an increase in living standards. Now, what happens is that you get people who go from a subsistence lifestyle who might be doing things that are not good for the planet and the wildlife and the environment, but all of a sudden they're interacting and being employed by the tourism industry. They're earning more money, and they've got a vested interest in protecting their wildlife and the environment. And you know, it's a wonderful thing. You look at the tiger population in India and Nepal, it's going through the roof. And that's because people are starting to realize that actually these things are worth more alive than they are dead. And they might take a chicken or whatever it is every now and then, but you know what? Tiger tourism is bringing in tens of thousands of people, and those people are paying lots of money, and those people are employing lots of people.
Yes.
And so there's this economic driver. And so that's one of the good news stories of us in this room, because adventure travel industry really is at the leading edge of tourism. You know, we're going places that are more inspirational, that are getting people talking, that are getting people engaged with that destination. And in that sense, we should feel really proud of what we do.
Absolutely.
Because it really does lift global standards.
And this is one of the
Let's
reasons.
clap ourselves, will we?
This is one of the reasons I can still feel good about getting on a plane. Amit Sankala from Encounters Asia said something I won't forget. He said, "Eyes on the tiger means the tiger will be protected." He's like, you stop getting on an airplane and stop going to India and stop visiting the tigers, the poachers are waiting. There's always somebody waiting.
But we have to fix aviation. So I think
doubt.
we're running out of time. But
No doubt.
Aviation is big, and I think we're hearing more about it today. But I had a fantastic conversation yesterday with Neste, a Finnish company, I think they are, and they're they used to be an old school oil company. Now they're a new school kind of sustainable aviation fuel is one of their primary things. And what they're doing in this space is extraordinary. And, and again, because of some of those conversations at the big end of town with IATA and airlines and so forth at WTTC, and aviation is really definitely trying to get to 10% sustainable aviation fuel by 2030. This is seriously good stuff. And Neste is doing really interesting stuff that might be applicable to others in this room. We're having this conversation, and we've got certain flights that we would like to remove from itineraries as part of our science-based targets decarbonisation plan. But actually, they're difficult. You know, if you're flying from Lima to Cusco or whatever, the alternative on a bus or whatever, it just isn't really. You've got to fly, and there's various sectors like that around the world. You just got to fly. However, what we can do actually is contribute to the global supply of sustainable aviation fuel, so that effectively that flight can be using SAF.
Yeah.
Now, we've got to structure a deal, and we haven't seen the paperwork yet, but it's really exciting to think that we can take a flight that we can't remove and potentially have that flight effectively using SAF. You know, that's game-changing stuff. And so it was another example for me that the excuses for inaction are just disappearing everywhere. You know, with EVs and renewable energy, SAF, and green methanol is coming into
permanent
shipping really
storage.
Fast. Absolutely. You know, there's just plenty of solutions on the table now, but we do have to think and we do have to act, and sometimes you've got to open your wallet in the hope that this thing works and back yourself for change.
Yes. We have 30 seconds left. What's your last piece of advice to the adventure travel industry? From the chair you sit in, you've created a very large, very successful adventure travel company that's focused on sustainability. Give us a word of wisdom.
I think it kind of it goes on from that last comment to back yourself for change. You know, we are at the leading edge of travel. There is no doubt about that. And you know, our industry is growing. You know, the growth since ATTA came along it's massive. Our footprint is getting bigger and bigger. We're in the very fortunate position that more and more people in the public want to come our way. You know, they just do. And so like just speaking for Intrepid, we'll continue to grow at 25% compound for the next 10 years. We just know we will. And everyone in this room should be similar if you want to be. But with growth comes responsibility, so you've got to make sure that you grow the right way. You've got to get your B Corp, you've got to get your 1% for the planet, you've got to get your Science-Based Targets Initiative. But the thing about that is that virtuous cycle that will drive staff engagement, it'll drive customer engagement, it'll drive shareholder engagement, it'll drive stakeholder engagement, and so everyone lifts. But you've got to put the hard yards in, you've got to do the work. It's not bullshit, it's actual action.
Absolutely. Well, Daryl, thank you so much for traveling all the way here, being a part of this today. Clearly, you and I need to go sit in a cafe and keep this going for a couple more hours.
Let's do it.
Except we got a summit to attend. But would everybody please put your hands together for Daryl Wade? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ed. Good stuff.
Absolutely.